A More Beautiful Life is a listener-supported show. You can learn more about the benefits you receive from your support, such as access to other courses, special access to tools, blogs, and skills through our Patreon channel, Patreon/A More Beautiful Life. Hello, you are listening to A More Beautiful Life podcast, recognizing, appreciating, and integrating earliest life experiences. My name is Kate White, and I created this podcast because of my passion for my work as a therapist and an educator in preventing and resolving earliest trauma. I believe that integrating our earliest experiences brings us closer to who we really are. On the show, I will be having discussions with others on the path who have explored healing our earliest experiences in life, or who, in my opinion, have found ways to live a more beautiful life. Today on the show we have Mary Jackson. Mary Jackson has been married since 1987, is the mother of 2 children who were born at home, and has been featured in 11 books and 5 movies. Mary has been a home birth midwife since 1975. She has attended over 2,500 births in the Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Ojai, California areas, and is now attending the home births of her second generation of babies. She is a certified Castellino Process Workshop Leader and co-teaches the Castellino pre- and perinatal training. In her first year after incorporating these pre- and perinatal approaches in her midwifery practice, her home-to-hospital transfer rate went from 20% to 6%. Mary is participating in the cutting-edge research about imprints that occur around the time of conception, pregnancy, and birth, and how they affect us throughout the rest of our lives and what it takes to heal from challenges in these experiences. She is a frequent speaker at national and international conferences and leads trainings throughout the world. And today we have Mary Jackson, a certified professional midwife, nurse, and I'm so glad you're here, Mary. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Kate. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I wanted to talk with you just a little bit because you have been so regular and important to the growth of pre- and perinatal somatic therapy, especially for supporting mothers and babies, and your work with Ray Castellino. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about your life and your training for people that don't know you so well.
Sure. Let's see, my life. My life is that, I've been married for 33 years and have 2 children that were both born at home. Mm-hmm. And I gave birth at 39 and 42 and had a 6-hour labor and a 3-hour labor. And I love to tell people that because a lot of times people who are over 35 wonder if they're at high risk for birthing. And I think that if you're healthy, you're not at high risk.
No, I had 2 labors under 4 hours. My second one was when I was 41. So
that's so cool. I love that.
Yeah. And but you've been a midwife since you were in your 20s, though, right?
Yeah, 46 years I've been attending home birth.
That's just insane.
Yeah. And I found it very young, and I feel really fortunate that I found the profession I really wanted to spend my life doing. How
did you find it? How did you find it? Did you attend a birth kind of by accident, or?
Well, I ran into a friend who was taking a class at the City College in Santa Barbara, and it was training people to be like medical assistants. And part of the training was to observe different areas in the hospital, and one of the areas was to do labor and delivery. And when he said that, my ears just perked up, and there was something I was always intrigued by birth and would just want to hear the stories that women told about their experience of birthing. And when he said that, it was like, I want to do that class. And it was already the second week of school, and I was late as usual. And, and I went and talked to the teacher, and she let me come in and actually shifted the births from the second year to the first year. And I got to watch my first birth in the hospital, which just sort of completed this whole circle for me. It just like inside of me, it was like, this is where I want to stand in my life. And I don't want to do it this way. And there was, at that birth, there was this very sweet Hispanic couple, and they were doing so great together, very deeply connected. And she got to 7 centimeters in transition, and the nurse was coming in offering pain medication. And finally, at that point, she decided to take it. And the labor slowed down, and they had to give her Pitocin to enhance the contractions and bring them closer together. And then the baby went into distress, the heart tones dropped, and they ended up needing to use forceps to deliver the baby. And one of them was over the baby's eye, and baby had to go to the nursery at that point. And, there was just like the biggest joy and a really big sadness as they were just alone in their room without their baby. And something just felt so wrong in my gut about that. And I thought there must be another way. And home birth was not a popular event in those years, in the early 70s. And so I decided just to look around the world for who is attending birthing women in a gentle, aware way. And found a granny midwife to apprentice with, who had come here to my area from New Mexico. And I became an apprentice to her and studied with her. And then I went to apprentice with Dr. Eddinghausen, who was a man in his 70s who had been attending births for 50 years or something.
Wow.
Yeah. And I followed him around, and he would do twins and breeches and everything. And I learned so much from him. And then after that, I went to France and studied with Michel Audant, who was just south of Paris at that time in the hospital. And he was doing water births, and a lot of my clients were starting to hear about water birth and curious about it and wanting that and asking if I would attend them with the water birth. And I didn't know anything about it at that point, and I thought it was interesting that the baby would be born coming out of the water into the air usually, and people are wanting to have the baby go from the water to the water. And it was like, doesn't seem so natural, but I should go learn about it. So I went to France and, stayed in the hospital for a while and just attended births with him and the midwives, and got to really trust water birth and love it. And it seemed to make it a more gentle experience for the baby to transition from the mother's body into the water, and then just to gently arise and come out to the air. And it was great to watch the midwives. They were very non-interventive, and the mother would squat in an upright squat to give birth, and then sit on a cloth on the floor. And the baby would be placed between the mother's legs in a safety position, which was face down, belly down, so the baby could drain. And the mother just got to have a chance to catch her breath and rest and realize what has happened, that I just did this amazing thing. And, oh yeah, there's the baby. And then she would get curious about the baby and start to explore with one finger, and then her 4 fingers, and then the palm. And eventually she would just scoop the baby up and bring the baby into her arms and look to her partner and go, we just did this, and the baby would just latch, and she would go, oh my gosh, look how smart the baby is already. And there was just this flow and this like rhythm and attunement that people just assumed it was all going to work, and mostly it did. And
Where was that you did that? Was that in California?
No, that was in France, in PTVA, just south of Paris.
Right.
Yeah. And it was a hospital, just a regular hospital where, all the local women would go to birth, and, they would end up with Michel Audant in the midwives and get this lovely water birth labor and birthing in the water if they wanted, and that was normal for them. And then people from all over the world were going there because he had written several books, and Birth Reborn was one of them that made people really curious to go there and birth with him. So it was a very eclectic gathering of all different kinds of people.
Wow. So, all right. So at what point, I kind of know a little bit about how you went through chronologically, the things that you've learned. So did you do cranial work first, or did you do work with Ray Castellino first after midwifery?
Well, back in California, there was this illegal state where there was no law about midwifery. And some years into my practicing, they changed the law about midwifery and made it illegal to attend birth if you're not licensed.
Yeah.
And so when the law was changed, I was arrested and put in jail.
I remember.
Yes. And then when they let me go, they required me to attend the nursing program, and they had asked if I would help write a challenge test, which I did, so that RNs who were wanting to be midwives could take a challenge test and get legalized that way and certified. But they wouldn't let me take that test until I became an RN, so I went through the RN program and became a registered nurse.
What year was that?
That was, I graduated I was arrested in the 70s, and I graduated from the nursing program maybe early 80s.
Well, how long did you have to be in prison, Mary?
Oh, I was there just one long 5 hours.
Oh, I see. And then they put all these rules on you.
Yeah, right. On lots of midwives. There were all of a sudden sort of like the 100th monkey consciousness around birth in California, where many women started to be attending their friends and sisters and relatives at home because women were sort of up in arms about how birth was being dealt with in the hospital at that point, where they were being medicated and baby pulled out with forceps, and it was really hard not to get that experience. So people were just wanting to stay home and do it on their own, and even with no attending person at all. And if they hear, oh, you've been to 10 births, will you come to my birth? And that's sort of how it began for many of us. So the medical board was cracking down on that and wanted us to get licensed and regulated. And so that happened. And after graduating from the nursing program, I sat the first time that a challenge test was offered in California that was adopted from Seattle, and got my license as a midwife that way.
Oh.
And then I, and all the while I had been doing births in between each apprentice that I had. So I was doing home births in the Santa Barbara area. And at some point in the 90s, I think it was, I met Ray, who had come to a birth resource center that I was one of the people that was opening this center where pregnant people could gather, and we had a library. They could borrow books and get childcare and just have a support place for them to come. And he came and gave a talk there. So I met him and got curious about his work and attended a workshop and got more curious about the work and decided to do his training. And also, a lot of the families that I worked with had been doing his work through BEBA, which is building and enhancing bonding and attachment. And when I watched the families who have gone through their program, I noticed that they related to their children in a very different way. And there seemed to be a stronger connection between the parents and the children. And the parents would take the child's lead in the play, and they weren't so interested to guide them or teach them about every toy, but there was more of like this open field in their interactions and in their communication. And I really loved that. So I decided to take his training, and it pretty much changed my life for how things were in my own family and how I dealt with pregnancy and birth, and just my presence at birth really changed as well. And it changed my perspective a lot on babies, about what they know, about what they remember and record, and how much they are a part of the birth journey.
Yes, your training on supported attachment is just, lovely. I mean, it's a great tool and that's been, I mean, that came from you and Ray together, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And, before I did the training, I used to see the birth as mostly the mother's experience, where, she had contractions, she dilated her cervix, she pushed the baby out, and end product was baby. And after his training, I really saw how much the baby fully participates in the journey, how they burrow with their heads and, move their shoulders to scrunch through and push with their legs and feet and really look for the path of least resistance to get out.
Right.
And the mother and the baby, they do the birth journey together.
Yes.
And I so know that in my bones now.
Yeah. Well, the story I like to tell about you, may I tell you what I tell people sometimes about my experience with you? Was that the 2 layers of support was developed out of this combination of you and Ray, and that he came to attend births to support you. And then you had a year of home births with no transfer.
Yes.
So 60 births in a row with no transfer. And here, 20% of births will transfer, and that's good.
And that was the rate of my transfers before I did the training. But I was so excited about what I was learning, and I would talk to my families about it just out of pure excitement and passion. And they got interested, and they thought, well, what if we did our work about, what our early history held, around conception, gestation, and birth, of their own experience coming into physical form. And so Ray and I started a practice called About Connections, and we provided space for the families to have sessions with us. And mainly they would have 3 sessions, 2 during pregnancy and 1 to integrate the experience. Yeah. And of those families who did the session work, I had 63 births with 0 transfers.
I know that's just phenomenal. I love telling people about that, and so this image I have over my left shoulder is an embryo inside the amnion, inside the chorion, and I developed a whole poster series to try and get people to get the sense of what it means to have support. And then I tell them the story of you and Ray and your development of the 2 layers of support, and also just what does it mean to work with birth in a different way.
Yes. Yeah, that's great. It's so impactful, because not only were the families having more layers of support, but I was also having more layers of support. Yes. Before this whole training, I thought, I had to do it all. I had to be there the whole time, every single second. And with the training, I realized that self-care is really important. And the layers of support are so important that I didn't have to feel like I had to do it all on my own, which was an imprint from my early childhood. And so when things would get stuck or stalled, I would call Ray or one of the practitioners, that were in the area, and just get support from them. And often just the phone call to the layers of support, when I came back, the labor was already moving on.
Wow, what a great story.
Yeah.
Well, I usually, even when I do my process workshops now, I will do the 2 layers of support exercise so people can get the felt sense of it in their bodies as they're going along. So,
that's
yes,
so great.
So grateful to you, Mary, and all that you've brought in, you and Ray. You've just collaborated for many years now. You started teaching his work too, and now you're teaching around the world. So how many years have you been working with Ray in this model and the BEBA model and working with About Connections?
I think it's about 21 years.
Gosh.
Yeah. I
That's
think
a
it's
long time.
2002. Yeah. It's a long time. Yeah.
Mary, that's amazing. And along the way, you did go do a biodynamic craniosacral training too.
Yeah, I did Ray's 2-year training, and then I did it at the same time I took his training. I also did the 2-year craniosacral training with Michael Shea,
Mm-hmm.
and got,
And then you went and did somatic experiencing.
yes, Peter Levine's training, another 2-year training.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
then you did the circle of security.
yes, which I love.
Yeah, I really get it. I want to do it too. I mean, I'm watching you really, you and Alex really particularly blossom with that work. And I teach that in my trainings also. I show them the website and talk about shark music, all the things that, that little video about parenting. I mean, people really love learning about
Yeah,
themselves. So,
yeah.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
they made it so simple to understand attachment styles and how parenting works and what it takes to develop a secure, healthy attachment. It's just so simplified. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different than other trainings too. What was it that you and Alex called? It's the primary something. I forget the model of secure, circle of security, but you do this really unique thing of looking at your strengths and your challenges within your attachment style. Is
Oh,
that right?
core sensitivities.
Core sensitivities. That's right.
Yeah,
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 it's good.
yeah, yeah. It's great. It just people just get it so easily. Yeah.
So people get a real complete package when they come and learn from you, Mary. It's like I've told you, when you start to speak, I really feel the clarity and all the things you've learned and how you've sort of woven them together to make a complete educational package, whether you're a student or a birthing parent or a parent of a baby or a child. I mean, it just feels really complete, and you've really worked hard to make it so. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I think it's a good package. It's supported me as well. Every training I do, there's such a deeper settling inside myself and with my family as I bring the new tools in and
Mhm.
practice the new tools with my children and my husband. I love that.
Right. Yes. Your husband is so dear, Alex.
Mm.
Well, when you look at the future now, like, just if you could wave a magic wand, and I know COVID's still here, but what do you see in the future with all these elements that you bring together, birth and understanding the baby's experience and energy work and
Yeah.
secure attachment? Like, what do you see, Mary, moving forward?
Well, the part of the work that I really love is seeing the health and the wholeness of people, no matter what age they are, from the prenate still in the womb to the 80-year-old person that I might have a session with, and to remind them that health still exists, that it never goes away, that imprints happen on top of it and can create a sensation that we're disconnected from it. But there's something about remembering that it's still there and we can still connect with it. Sort of can turn a negative perspective around into a positive place where people can grow and change and make new choices. And when that happens, it really feeds me, and I love supporting people to grow and change.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. That's the most exciting, is to get them to feel who they really are underneath some of the more difficult challenges, and it can be
Yes,
done.
yes, and that all their behaviors are created from a place of health and goodness. Even if it's like sort of an odd reaction to things, there was something in their history where they had to create that behavior in order to survive what they were living with.
Mhm.
And so just to help them to see that they're on the right track. And as they get a broader perception, they can understand more what lies underneath it and what's still there in the wholeness.
Oh, that's really beautiful, Mary. So fitting for this podcast, A More Beautiful Life. And Well, I just want to thank you for coming and talking with us and sharing your wisdom and your journey. And I hope there'll be more chances to talk with you about your work. And so thank you. And I would like to end with, my usual, Mary, what makes your life more beautiful?
Right now, with COVID-19 around, what is really filling my soul, I call it my religion, is that I've been going backpacking into the backcountry where I live and spending 5 to 10 days on a river in the quiet with no sign of man around or women. And listening to the river all day, all night, and watching it go by, and hiking, and just being in nature. Nature has always been a resource for me from early on, like 3 years old on, and I still go there to fill myself up. So I think that helps me to have a more beautiful life.
That sounds really wonderful. Okay, well, thank you, and we'll have you again, I hope.
I would love that. Thank you, Kate.
You've been listening to A More Beautiful Life podcast. To support our show, please go to Patreon /A More Beautiful Life.